Hi, welcome to the Football Journey podcast. I am your host, Derek Ware. This podcast is powered by a football journey. Today we have some really special information. There's something we're going to talk about, an interview. We're going to interview somebody who has done something that nobody has ever done before. The kid's name is Zack Kelley. He is a college football player, but 2 years ago, as a high school football player, he tore his ACL. Less than a month before the season was about to begin. He tore it in late July, and the season starts in August. And so that pretty much means the season is over. But somehow, and we'll talk about it, this kid comes back and plays most of the season. He had over 1,000 yards receiving after tearing his ACL in July. He scored over 20 touchdowns after tearing his ACL in the July before the season began. How was this possible? How did he do this? Well, he's going to walk us through and talk to us about all those things. Some background knowledge before we even get into this is Zack Kelley is the son of head football coach at Pulaski Academy, Kevin Kelley. And Kevin Kelley is known as the coach who never punts. He is somebody, and he's won multiple state championships. So he's won the last 3 in a row. They're working on their 4th in a row here. And so something really special. And then we'll talk to Zack, and he'll give us some really good insights. But one thing I want to talk about before we get into this is just so often in our society, and just us as human beings, myself included, we sit back and we say, well, nothing can be done. This is just the way that it is. Well, Zack Kelley and Kevin Kelley are the opposite of that. Instead of looking at it and saying, oh, that's just the way that it is, they sit there and they say, well, let's pretend for a moment that it's not this way. How could it not be true? Let me give you an example. I had an appointment. My appointment was at 8:30, and I arrived at 7:30. I thought that my appointment was at 7:30, and I got there, and my schedule during football season is really tight. I mean, I'm operating on minutes here of free time, and so I had to fit this appointment in, and the appointment I thought was at 7:30. I get in there, and the lady is like, well, your appointment is not at 7:30, it's at 8:30. And I was like, well, I can't make that. What can we do? Can you just move me up? And she's like, nope, nothing can be done. And I said, well, hold on, let's for a moment pretend that something can be done. Now, if something can be done, what could we do? And she's like, well, maybe the people who have the 2 appointments ahead of you, maybe those people won't show up. I said, awesome. So I sat and I waited. Well, those people came and they showed up. And she walked up to me. She said, okay, everyone's here for their appointment. So it looks like you either are going to have to come back at 8:30 or reschedule. Well, I tried to reschedule and I couldn't. And so I said, okay, well, that doesn't work. What else can we do? And she's like, nothing. Nothing else can be done. Those people are here. They're going to go ahead of you, and then you're going to go, or you're not going to go. And I said, okay, well, I guess nothing can be done. I threw my hands up and I walked out. I mean, I didn't literally throw my hands up, but figuratively. And I walked out, and I almost got to my car, and I thought, you know what? I'm not going to accept this. Something can be done. I turned around and I walked back in, and I went up to the host and I said, ma'am, who's the person that has the appointment ahead of me? And she pointed to the guy, and I went over to him. I said, hey man, my appointment's at 8:30. Yours is at 8. Can we switch? I'll pay you money. How much money would it take for us to switch appointments? And he looked at me and said, yeah, sure. And he came up with an amount of money, and I gave him that money, and we switched appointments, and it worked out for everybody. And so I left thinking, you know what? How often in my life do I just say, well, I guess that's it, when I could be thinking outside the box and finding new ways? Well, in this podcast, we're going to talk to Zack Kelley about how they did it and how that thought process works. It's a really special podcast, and it's exciting. It's exciting for me just to get to talk to him and to share this with you guys. Now, before we even get started, I want you to look at this. I got a T-shirt on. This is MTCS Track and Field. MTCS, that is a school out in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. It is Middle Tennessee Christian School. I worked there. This was one of my first jobs 11, 12 years ago as a coach. And when I got there, they said, hey, let's start a track team. And I said, I'll do it. Let me do it. I love track. Let me coach it. And they let me do that. And we started a track team. And this was one of the first shirts that we ordered. And Middle Tennessee Christian, they've got a special place in my heart, man. I still try and keep up with those kids there. And they're all getting married and, doing great things and big things. And it's just an awesome school. So I just want to give a shout out to them. Hey, if you've got a school that you want me to talk about, give a little shout out, send me the shirt. Send me a shirt. I'll wear it on the podcast. If you're listening to this on iTunes or SoundCloud, you can't see the shirt, but that's fine. But it's also on YouTube. And so if you send me the shirt, I'll wear that shirt. All right, now let's get into the interview here. I just listen to this part here. I asked Zack the importance of his ACL and kind of the weight of that when he first found out that he tore his ACL. And this is what he says. As you can see from Max Preps, this is Zach's senior year statistics. He went on to have a really great senior year, even in spite of tearing his ACL. I'm going to show his highlight video here in the background, and what you'll notice is in every one of these plays, he has a knee brace on his left knee, and so you'll see him making cuts and running full speed. This all happened after his surgery. He went on to play a full senior year. Zack, go ahead and tell us. Give us a scenario here. So you're playing in the 7-on-7 game in the national championship. You're in high school. You're a senior. It's your last year. It's in July, late July, and the season's about to begin. And tell us kind of what happens and how you tear your ACL.
We were in Washington, D.C., right outside of it, I think, Virginia. And we were in the semifinal game for the national championship. And I go in on defense and play corner like I have done a little bit in the past. And I was guarding a receiver who ran a post, and I cut with him, and the quarterback threw the ball up, and I jumped and deflected it. And I jumped off my left leg and landed on the same leg, and it just popped. And I don't know what tearing a ligament feels like or anything like that. So I was like, oh, that kind of hurt. And so I hop off the field on my right leg, on my good leg, and I sit down on the bench. And it doesn't even occur to me that anything horrible has happened to me at all. Later to find out that I had torn my ACL right then. So I didn't play the rest of that game, and my dad was asking, hey, what happened? How does it feel? And by then I had explored a little bit, and I discovered, hey, I can't cut side to side, but what I can do is run a straight line full speed. And he was like, okay, I don't really know what that means. Do you think you can go in for one play and don't cut side to side? And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. So we won the semifinal game, and we go to the championship, and on the first play I go in and I just run a go route, and the quarterback, it was Lane Hatcher at the time, throws the ball, and I catch it, and everything's all fine and good until a guy's about to touch me, and I cut instinctively off my left leg, and I kind of collapsed to the ground in the end zone. And that one was a little bit different than tearing an ACL. I couldn't bend my knee at that point, so I hopped off the field on my good leg, and I kind of sit down on the bench, and I can't bend my left leg. And what had happened then was I had a bucket handle tear of my meniscus, and so it really folds over on itself, and your knee is in a pretty much a locked position. You can move it a few degrees forward and back, but that's pretty much it. And so then I knew that something had really happened. We called Dr. Heffley while we were in the hotel. So we get back to Little Rock. And that night, Dr. Heffley comes to the Walmart parking lot, and in the back of my dad's truck, I'm sitting there, and he's doing the ACL check. He was like, I'm pretty sure you tore your ACL and probably your meniscus. That's why you can't bend your knee. So I go home, and the car ride home was pretty devastating. And, it's late July, and there's no way I was going to be able to play my senior season. And I had gotten a few college offers from places that I was sure they were going to take away. Devastating injury, an ACL that takes, about 6 months to come back from. Then, why would they want me to play on their college team when they could find a bunch of other guys that could do it? And so, that night was real hard. And so I didn't know at the point, but I do now, obviously, that my dad did not sleep probably didn't sleep the nights after I tore my ACL because he was up researching different ways to come back from an ACL surgery. And he was looking around. He was texting Dr. Heffley constantly, who's a family friend of ours. And I played with his son, Will Heffley, who's now at Tulsa, playing quarterback. So he's texting Dr. Heffley constantly. And my dad finally comes upon stem cells. And I think that really intrigues him. And so he texts Dr. Heffley, hey, what about stem cells? Can you do that? Dr. Heffley's like, no one's ever done that on an ACL or a knee. I don't know if I can do that. And my dad showed him, I guess, enough research that Dr. Heffley really got interested. So Dr. Heffley ended up doing his own research on it because he was so interested. And he knew how willing my dad and I were to try something new, to come back sooner than anyone else has. And I had surgery, I think 2 or 3 days after we got back, and we did stem cells. And what the surgery procedure is, they stick a needle in my hip bone and extract bone marrow. And I'm not exactly sure how they, get the stem cells from this, but then they injected it into my knee during surgery and did the normal ACL procedure. They took 1/3 of my patella tendon and replaced my torn ACL. And he completely took out my medial meniscus because it was unsalvageable, he decided, which actually did help me come back a little bit sooner since we had to not worry about that healing at all. The only downside to taking out a meniscus is later in life, lower 40s, upper 30s, you get bad arthritis and your bones start grinding together.
All right, let's take a break for a second and just talk about what stem cells are. I've done a little bit of research here. I'm no doctor, but I have done some research, and a stem cell is a cell without an identity. And so we've got all these different cells in our body. We've got skin cells and liver cells and muscle cells and brain cells, and they do all these different things. Well, a stem cell is a cell that can become any of those things. And so it changes depending on where it's placed. And so stem cells, if you put it in a area where a traumatic event has happened, the stem cell will look at the damage and then decide, where can I help? What can I do? And so in Zack's case, the stem cells went in and looked at his knee and saw that there's some things going on, and was like, okay, well, let's start to become the things that this knee is missing. It's a pretty interesting thing to think about, and they're doing lots of research on it. It's called regenerative medicine, is what it's called, where they look at stem cells and what they can become. Now, there is some controversy with stem cells. Well, there's two different types of stem cells. There's embryonic stem cells. Those come from a fertilized embryo. And then there are adult stem cells. Now, we're not talking about embryonic stem cells here. We're talking about adult stem cells. We're talking about stem cells that come from your own body. And so Zack's stem cells were taken from his hip, out of the bone marrow in his hip, and then injected into his knee. And so that is different than embryonic stem cells. I'm going to read you this little quote here. This is from Medical News Today, and it talks about the stem cell controversy. It says, the main critique of this research is that it requires the destruction of a human blastocyte. That is, a fertilized egg not given the chance to develop into a fully developed human. Okay, we're not talking about that type of stem cells. We're not talking about stem cells that come from a fertilized human egg that is then destroyed and not given the chance to fully develop. We're not talking about those stem cells. We're talking about stem cells that come from adult stem cells that come from your own body. Okay, just wanted to be clear about that. There's not controversy about adult stem cells, but there is controversy about embryonic stem cells. Okay, so let's separate those two. Now we're going to go back to Zack, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about what else they did. They did a couple other procedures. One of them is called, well, he's going to tell you about it. Here, we're going to go back to him. Hey, real quick, let me ask you this. What kind of ACL did you have? Did you do the cadaver? Did you do they can take part of your hamstring out and use that, or?
Yeah, they took my patella tendon.
Okay.
Yeah, they took he said took the middle third. So the patella tendon sits in between, or it sits right below the kneecap, right? And I'm feeling it right now. It's a huge tendon, and so doctors do that. They take a third of it because you're not going to tell your patella tendon. Very rarely will you, and it's very easy to recover from that. So yeah, they took that, and that's some athletes do hamstring, but that really makes you come back a little bit slower. They say so. We took what would be the fastest recovery at the moment that we know of, and so the stem cells helped heal the ACL a little bit sooner, and that was a major factor in coming back sooner. But another factor was rehabbing a lot sooner on my leg. And so the doctors say don't put any pressure on it for, I don't know, 2 weeks or, however long it is, like always crutch around. The day of surgery, they had me up and walking. So I walked down the hallway, and it seemed like a long ways because I was walking real slow. And then up a couple stairs, and then down the stairs, and then back down the hallway to my bed. And I didn't have a nerve block or anything. You don't want to have a nerve block because then you can't exercise like you need to. So no nerve block.
What's a nerve block?
And it hurt real bad that night, of course. Nerve block, here, I'll explain it this way. I tore my labrum in my shoulder and broke it in 2 places my junior year, at the beginning of my junior year. And they repaired that, and I had a nerve block in my shoulder, and what that does is you can't feel anything in your arm at all for like 2 days. And, that's so you don't really have to take pain meds, and you don't get addicted, and you don't have any chance of it, and, you can sleep well at night, that type of thing.
So a nerve block is like a drug.
So, yeah, a nerve block, pretty much, but yeah, it just blocks your nerve. You can't feel anything. It's like your arm's dead, and you forget it's there.
Wow.
And so if they were to do that, to an ACL surgery, you wouldn't be able to feel any of your leg. Therefore, you wouldn't be able to walk around on it or exercise at all. So we opted out of that. And, that comes at a cost of it hurting real bad. But again, I was willing to deal with that to get the outcome that I wanted. Rehabbing a lot sooner. So I don't exactly remember the time frame of how well I was doing. But my dad said you can't play until you can run a 4.8 40. And I was like, okay, that's doable. That's doable. And I think he said a month out, or maybe a little bit longer than a month out, I ran a 5 flat 40. And I was like, I don't feel very fast at all, but if that's a 5 flat, then I think I can get to a 4.8. And I got to a 4.8, I guess at around 50 days, or a little bit over 50 days, and I was cutting pretty well. I was wearing my big Don Joy knee brace, and it was feeling all right. It would swell up quite a bit. Dr. Heffley said because of the stem cells, and also another thing we did, which was PRP injections. What that is the components of your blood that really help the healing process of whatever needs to be healed. And so they took my blood and they spin it in a centrifuge to take out the red blood cells. And so what's left is what looks like a kind of a goldeny yellow clear just mixture. And so they inject that into your knee to boost the healing process, because that's the healing components of your blood. So that would make it swell up a little bit, but that did make it feel a lot better after a few days, because that's all it does, is sits in your knee and heals. So we did that.
All right, so in summary, they do the surgery, they replace the ACL, they have to remove the meniscus entirely. The meniscus is all torn up. So here's what the meniscus is. A meniscus is the cartilage in your knee that stops your 2 bones from rubbing together. It is like a cushion that stops the 2 bones from rubbing together. Well, he's torn his meniscus all up. And so they just had to remove the whole thing. and replace the ACL. Well, you can live without a meniscus just fine. It's just when you get older, in your 30s, 40s, 50s, that you have bone on bone rubbing together, and it ends up wearing down the bones on in that joint there. So they had to replace that whole thing. They inject the stems, or they had to remove that whole meniscus, replace the ACL. They inject the stem cells in. They do the PRP, and he plays the whole season. They win the state championship. But in the state championship game, Zack takes a helmet to the knee, and because of those knee braces they wear, it kind of funnels all that impact into one spot, the kneecap. And so his knee was really bothering him. His kneecap was bothering him, but he didn't think anything of it, and he kept lifting weights. And so what he found out later is that helmet to the knee fractured his kneecap. And then because of the extra stuff that he was doing, lifting weights, running, playing basketball, he ended up putting so much stress on it that he came down one time just in a basketball game, and it broke his kneecap. They had to go in and repair the kneecap. Well, first, before they did that, they took an X-ray of his knee. It's the same knee that he tore his ACL in, not too long before. And so when they took that X-ray, the radiologist is there. He's going to read the X-ray to him. Also in the room is his dad and Zack and the doctor that did the ACL surgery, Dr. Heffley. Well, they're all in the room, and the radiologist says, "Okay, well, I've got some bad news. You've fractured your kneecap, but also you've torn your meniscus. You only have half a meniscus." And the doctor that did the ACL surgery was like, "Well, no, he doesn't have any meniscus because I took it all out when I did the ACL surgery." Well, the radiologist was like, "No, I can definitely see a meniscus here. It's just not it's not all the way there." And so what they had concluded was that the stem cells had grown back. The meniscus had grown that meniscus back to a place where he had none, and now he has some. Well, they did surgery on his knee. They put some screws in his kneecap, and he's at Ouachita Baptist now, and he's playing football and doing a lot of stuff on it. Well, it was really bothering him, having those screws in his kneecap, so he elected to have the screws removed. And so when they removed those screws, he gave Dr. Heffley permission to go in and look at the meniscus and see how that all looked. And he found out that meniscus had grown back all the way, 100%, just from those stem cells. And so here, he's going to talk to us a little bit more about that.
The x-ray showed that I had completely broken my knee and my kneecap in half. I had surgery the day before. It was the day before my birthday, I remember that, January 3rd. And they had put 2 screws going down through my kneecap and a figure 8 wire coming through the screws and out of it on top with a buckle on top of my kneecap to keep it all together. And while he was doing the surgery, he had asked us if he could look at the meniscus because he was going to cut my knee open anyway. And we're like, yeah, sure. See what that radiologist was talking about. So he does that, and after the surgery, he talks to us, and he's like, "It has grown back from nothing. A little bit has. It's not completely together, but it looks like it's grown back a little bit." And that's the point that we really saw that stem cells. What else could it be? It's the stem cells made my medial meniscus grow back from nothing, and.
That's pretty crazy that the stem cells went in and they just kind of looked around and saw, hey, there's no meniscus here. So the stem cells that you used are adult stem cells. Is that correct?
Right. They were from my hip, my bone marrow.
Your own body. Okay.
My own body, right? So there's no outside source. So, your body's not going to reject something that comes from itself. Right, and that could be another argument to not use stem cells from babies because your body might reject it in theory. But yeah, right. it's coming from your own bone marrow. So, and there's really no harm done.
So I did a little research and looked at this, and just found that what they found is that there are stem cells all over your body in different areas, and those stem cells are there waiting for trauma to happen. And when that trauma happens, those stem cells can can help get to the place where they need to get. But the problem is that you have stem cells in your hip that you're not using because there's no trauma there, and so the doctors simply removed those stem cells that were just kind of laying dormant in your hip, and then injected it into your knee where your body really needed them.
Right.
And then also with the PRP, that's the plasma-rich platelets.
Platelet-rich plasma.
Platelet-rich plasma. You're taking your own blood. You're not adding drugs to it. You're not. There's no outside source again. It's just you're taking your own blood and then spinning it and taking the really rich part of your own blood, the healing portion of your own blood, and injecting it back in. And so it kind of seems like it's almost a natural medicine or a natural way of dealing with it. Am I wrong in thinking that?
Yeah, I haven't even really thought about it until when you're talking about it with me right now. Yeah, there's a whole group of people out there that are completely against using outside sources drugs and all these kinds of healing things. They're like, oh, I don't want to put that into my body, or this could be harmful to me later on. But yeah, when it's completely natural from your own body, then I can't see anything wrong with that. You're taking the dormant cells from your hip, and all you're doing is just helping your body put them in the place where they need to be.
It's pretty awesome to think about all the things that that surgery has done and the future of that. In 2001, Jamal Anderson, he was a running back for the Atlanta Falcons, and he had led the league in rushing a few times and been a Pro Bowler and done all these things. Well, he tore his ACL, and he wasn't very old. I think he was maybe 30. I'd have to look it up. He tore his ACL. This is in 2001, and that meant the end of his career. He was done. And now, 16 years later, we've come so far, but still ACL surgeries take 6 to 9 months. Tom Brady tore his ACL, and here he is, a professional athlete with all the money in the world, all the resources in the world, access to the best doctors, and it took him 6 to 9 months to come back. There's millions of dollars on the line, but somehow Zack Kelley and his dad, Kevin Kelley, have figured out a way to circumvent that stuff just from research. It had been easy for them to throw their hands up and say, well, if Tom Brady can't do it, that means nobody can. And instead they said, okay, well, where can we figure out, where can we find the possibility in this? It seems like this is the new way. The way things should be done now is that, hey, we've learned this, we found this out, we understand how stem cells work. Let's just everybody do it. But that's not really how the medical profession works, and that's not how other things work. And the crazy thing about Zack's dad, Kevin Kelley, is that he was reading an article written by David Romer. David Romer is an economist, works at Cal Berkeley, and David Romer's whole purpose of this article that he wrote is he wanted to find out, do corporations, do major companies, do they optimize? Do they make the right decisions? There's millions, billions of dollars on the line. Are they making the right decisions to be successful? And so in looking at that, he couldn't, he wanted to find out Walmart, Costco, Microsoft, all these companies, are they doing the right things? He wanted to find that out. Well, he couldn't really look at those companies because they don't have clear enough statistics. But a company that he could look at that has clear statistics that have gone back for decades was the NFL. And so he wanted to look, do NFL football teams, do they optimize? Do they make the right decision? There's millions of dollars on the line for these NFL football teams. And the decisions that they make are very public. And so surely they are making the best decisions. And through his article, he found out that NFL football teams should go for it on fourth down far more than they do. They should be going for it on fourth down at a higher rate instead of punting. Well, Zack or Kevin Kelley read that article and he looked at that and he realized, man, that makes a lot of sense. And so he, after that, decided, you know what, I'm never going to punt again. And he doesn't punt. But the question is interesting because you would think that NFL teams would obviously optimize, and David Romer found out that they do not. NFL football teams do not optimize, do not make the right decisions when millions of dollars on the line. And the same is true in the medical profession. You know, this has been so he had to talk the doctor into doing it, and the only reason he did it is because he's a family friend. And then they find out all these incredible results. You know, there's a lot of research on stem cells and those types of surgeries, but just because it's never been done before, it's not the status quo, makes it hard for a doctor to be willing to step up and say, you know what, I'll do that. You know, because these, you know, as a doctor, you really have two motivations. And this is really true for any boss in any profession, is that there's two motivations. One motivation is to do what's best for the customer or the company. And the other motivation is to do what is going to catch you the least amount of criticism. And so as a head football coach, let's say the head football coach does know that it's better to go for it on fourth down in certain scenarios than it is to punt it. But he knows he's going to face the most amount of criticism if he doesn't get it on fourth down. And a doctor might know, hey, injecting these stem cells is probably going to give the best result to the patient. But if it doesn't work, I'm going to catch a lot of criticism from this. And so it is for that doctor, he goes with that one motivation of, hey, let's play it safe. Here is a book. You guys have probably heard of this book. It is by Michael Lewis. It is called Moneyball. And I really enjoyed this book, but also I enjoy the author, Michael Lewis. He writes books about people who have it right, who know the truth, when everybody else believes the opposite. You know, if you haven't read Moneyball, it's about a baseball general manager who finds that players are being undervalued. Players are valued based, you know, at this time, players were being valued based on their appearance instead of based on their performance. And he said there's an objective way to measure their performance with statistics. And so he drafted players, recruited players, and signed players based off of their statistics, not based off of their appearance. And so he ended up with a ragtag group of great baseball players. You know, you had a pitcher who threw the ball slow and so sidearmed, or almost a submarine throw to where his hand was scraping the dirt almost. But this pitcher had an incredible way of getting people out. His statistics were great. He had a first baseman who was overweight and didn't hit very many home runs, but could get on base in other unspectacular ways. He was great at working the pitch count and drawing a walk, which is just as valuable as a base hit, but not as spectacular. And so he ended up being really successful looking at it in a different way. Michael Lewis also wrote a book called The Undoing Project, which is about two researchers who found a way to learn more and do things differently. And then he also wrote the book The Big Short. The Big Short is also a movie, a good movie, but it was about the people who saw the 2008 crash of the economy. Those people saw it coming, and those people ran around like Chicken Little telling everybody, hey, the sky is falling, and buying up shorts, investing in the fact that they knew that the economy was going to crash, and telling everybody that they knew this, and nobody believed them. Nobody trusted that. And in the end, they were found to be right. And so I like those books. I like Michael Lewis's books in the sense because he writes books about people, individuals who know something that the rest of the world doesn't know and is not willing to believe because it's not common knowledge. The Moneyball and The Big Short, great movie, The Big Short, and good book. So check those things out. And it's the same as what's going on here with Zack and his knee. His dad, him, his doctor all know something that the rest of the world has not caught on to yet. Do you think that the medical industry optimizes? You know, now this seems like the new way. You know, you returned from a torn ACL in how many days did it take?
I think it was 57 days.
57 days. You scored a 55-yard touchdown your first play. You ended up having over 1,000 yards receiving and over 20 touchdowns, and doing all these things, after tearing your ACL in July, which up until you did it, that meant, hey, the season is over. So do you think this is the new way? You think the medical profession is going to everyone's going to start doing this now?
I wish they would, for the sake of people that do tear their ACLs. And you were talking, and you texted me the other day and said that you had 2 football players tear their ACLs. And, I immediately think at that point, man, I wish that they could do what I do. I wish their doctors had the knowledge that Dr. Heffley did and had the courage to do that. And, I think it will be the way to do it. Not anytime soon, though. And I believe that for the reason that doctors don't want to take risks the same way that coaches do. They have their own self-interest to look after, If they think something's really risky and they don't have enough evidence to, really go for that thing that they want to do. So if they see, hey, this kid came back from ACL surgery in 57 days and the different factor in this was he used stem cells. But they're like, okay, well, that's only one case. How do we really know that this is the new way to do it? Or how do we really know that this isn't just a fluke? And I can kind of understand that. But, you're really talking about changing someone else's life. And, I wouldn't be at the school I'm at right now. I wouldn't be playing football anymore. I might be on a completely different track if I hadn't done this. And I do believe that it's going to be the future of it, and Dr. Heffley has actually taken a step in that. And he flew around the U.S. a little bit to do more research after my surgery, and I think after he found out that it had grown my meniscus back a little bit. And he has started doing stem cell procedures on people so they don't have to undergo surgery, right? So if you tear just your meniscus partially, and let's say you're an elderly person, and this is a real case that he's done. You take the bone marrow from their own hips, right, and you get the stem cells and you inject it into their knee, right? So you don't have to go through surgery, and you don't have to not walk on your leg for a long time. And I think that's really important for elderly people because it's so hard to come out of surgery. It's so hard to get back into your daily life doing the things you were doing before. And a lot of people don't completely come back from that. They have a walker, they have to have a cane because they had surgery, and their muscles never come back from that. And I think if you go through a stem cell procedure where you don't get put to sleep and you just have the procedure right there, your knee swells up a little bit because you're putting a lot of fluid in it, right? But you can get up and walk right then, and you're immediately healing from that time on. And the blood flow from you exercising and moving just in your daily activities of walking around will help it heal more and keep you from, sitting on your butt for weeks to come because you had a surgery.
That's awesome. The rehab just happens so much sooner, and that makes a lot of sense. You go in, there's so much trauma, and you have a surgery. You're an elderly person, you have a surgery. It's tough to bounce back from that. Your muscles don't just, once they atrophy, they don't just go right back to normal like a younger person's might have. And so it's a way for they can rehab it as their own body is fixing it, instead of going in and causing a bunch of damage and scar tissue and all that. That it's just simply, hey, let's move some fluid from here to there and let the body do what it naturally does and heal itself. That's just a really crazy thing to think about. Just how amazing our bodies are.
Now I won't have arthritis when I get older. I don't have to worry about possibly getting a knee replacement because my bones are grinding against each other later, all from the stem cells.
That's awesome. That's pretty crazy. Yeah, just that one little idea, that move of putting those stem cells there because that is a pretty sad prognosis of, hey, look, we had to remove your meniscus, and so now just expect, when you get older, just expect your knees to be your knee to feel terrible, and to, instead of that, to be able to say, hey, look, you're going to be, when you get older, you're going to be fine. Your meniscus is there, and it's going to cushion those knees, and your bones aren't going to grind together, and you'll feel great. And that's a pretty awesome gift to get. Just that whole story is just a really cool thing of just somebody standing up and saying, no, this can't be right. This can't be the way that it is. Oftentimes, everybody, they get a bad prognosis like you got, and they say, okay, well, that's that. My doctor has said that there's no way. He said there's no way, and we accept that. Instead, your dad were like, I'm not going to accept that. I'm gonna do my own due diligence. I'm gonna do my own research. I'm gonna study and lay awake at night, try and find ways to make this better, and then to find that and to see the benefit of that. And speaking of that benefit, your dad has done the same thing with football. There's a way that football has always been played, and your dad has sat back and said, no. I think there's a better way, and he onside kicks it every time. He goes for it every time on fourth down. He doesn't return punts. He plays in a weird, unique way. Now, tell me about how that all started with your dad.
It started when he became the head coach in 2003 at PA. I was 6 years old, so I don't remember. I just know what he's told me. And he described the first game that he was the head coach. He went for it on fourth down, and they were losing pretty bad, and they ended up losing the game, by a big factor. And at one point during the game, he actually punted the football because they were backed up so much, and our own crowd was cheering. They're like, oh yeah, we're punting the ball, that's enough of that, going for it on fourth down, because they looked at the score and they're like, is it working? And they had decided, no, it's not working. It's because of fourth downs. And they were very angry about it. So they saw us punt and they were cheering. And when I got real angry, he's like, we're giving up the football. Why are you cheering? Your goal in offense is to score every time you have the ball, score a touchdown. And we have failed and punted the ball and you're cheering. So he got real mad and he said, I'm never punting ever again. Well, he has a little bit, but not really. I think we've punted 7 times in the past 7 seasons or so. But yeah, that really hit. And what started it, and you talked about it a little bit earlier, he's like, why are we doing the things we're doing? So he sat down with other coaches. He's like, if we can't find the why and we're doing something, then we don't need to do it anymore. So he looked at punting. He's like, why are we punting? And the big answer was, well, that's what we've always done. It's like, well, we get, we help our defense out with the field position. And he did his own research. He's like, field position does not matter as much as a lot of coaches think it does. And what matters is scoring when you have the ball. So why would you waste a fourth of your downs when you could just go for it on fourth down and give yourself another chance to make a first down to continue the offensive drive? And he did that with kickoffs. He said, why do we kick it off deep? And I think it wasn't really as much that as it was, how can I get the ball more on offense, right? Because you don't really score on defense a whole lot. You score when you're on offense. Yeah. He's like, how can I get the ball on offense more? Well, onside kicking. He's like, well, let's see, what are the consequences if I do onside kick? What would bad could come to this? Well, let's say you onside kick it every time and you never get it. Well, the returning team is going to get the ball on probably around, since you have to kick it at least 10 yards every time, they're going to get it on around the 48-yard line, the 47-yard line, if they get it every time. And he said if we kick it off deep, the statistics show that they will return the ball on average to the 35-yard line or the 34-yard line. And when you take a step back and you look at it, you're like, that's only an 18-yard difference for a chance to get the ball back on offense. Essentially a turnover. And what's way more important than field position in football is turnovers. And the stats show that a turnover will determine who wins a football game 80% of the time, right? So if I turn the ball over 2 times and the opposing team turns the ball over 3 times, I'm going to win 80% of the time. And basically, an onside kick is a turnover, right?
Right.
And he decided if I can get about 1/5 of our onside kicks, if I can recover 1/5 of those, then it will be worth it. And so that's what we started doing a long time ago, and it's paid off.
Last year, I went and spent some time talking to Kelley. I went up there and watched him practice and watched his onside kicks and just watched how, the way that they do things. And that's where I got to talk to Zack, and I talked to his dad, and it was inspiring to me. And so it inspired me to really go out and look up analytics and to find the numbers behind it. And so here's a good book. This book is called Scorecasting, and it actually has a chapter in here about Kelley and about this idea of going for it. Other chapters in this book are, does offense win championships? Is it true that defense wins championships, or does offense win championships, or are they both? And so you'd have to look. I'm not going to tell you the answer to that. You got to do some research on your own. But it's pretty insightful. And then here's another chapter. So what is driving the home field advantage? So why do teams have a home field advantage? And then how a coin toss trumps all, talks about why American Idol is a fairer contest than NFL overtime. And then here's another one. Do athletes really melt when iced? So does it actually do something to ice the kicker? Lots of good chapters in there. Here's another book. It's called The Wages of Wins by David J. Barry. That's a good book. And then Stumbling on Wins. This is another one. 2 economists look at what causes wins. One of the things that I thought was interesting in this book is it talks about the value of a coach. And it takes basketball and it looks at, is coaching just about having the athletes, or is it about coaches making the players better? And they found that there are coaches in the NBA who, when players go there, their statistics improve. They play better because of the coaching. You're going to have to read it to find more out, but interesting book as well. All right, we're going to go back to Zack here, and I'm going to ask him a question. What is it like playing for your dad? That's pretty crazy. Now, let me ask you this: as a player, and as you've played for him and been around your teammates. How did the players and the teammates? How does that make you feel? Kind of that mentality and that attitude and kind of that his logic behind that.
So you see the success behind it, and and my dad does a very, very good job of explaining why he does everything. He has a reason for doing everything, so he's not just making it up. And the player, he does a good job of explaining to the players, what's really happening. And so the players completely back him up in it, and they see the success that it has, and they think it's the most fun thing in the world. They love onside kicking, and I know they've made shirts in the past that say PA onside kick team, and they love wearing those shirts around. Going forward on 4th down, it's very demoralizing to a team when you're out there and it's 4th and 10. And you just had 3 downs that you didn't get any yards. And it's out to 4th and 10, and their defense is out there. You're on offense, and you make a 1st down on 4th down.
It's been, going up and watching Pulaski Academy practice was pretty eye-opening for me, watching the onside kick and watching, I'm a football coach. I'm the offensive coordinator at Princeton High School, and it's a 4A school in Texas. And going up there, I'm expecting to see, you guys have won 3 of the last, you've won the last 3 state championships and you've come down to Texas and beaten a team that is really, really good. Ended up winning the state championship the year after you guys beat them in 5A. And so I was expecting, hey, this must be a really incredible place. There must be a bunch of stud athletes, and you guys must have, a bunch of coaches and all the facilities. And I think they've got an incredible. PA's got great facilities, but it's not like a Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas or a place like that. It's the kids. When I watch y'all practice, look like regular kids. The stadium is a regular stadium, and so it's kind of interesting to think, well, where do you guys get these advantages from? And it seems like maybe that mentality of hey, I'm always gonna be trying to find a way to do something more and do something better. I'm not going to accept the status quo. I'm not going to accept the idea of, hey, this is just the way it's always been done, but to instead always be finding new ways of improving, what you already do. It seems like that's the secret sauce. It obviously has been the secret sauce when it comes to your ACL injury, in that you guys found a way to come back and to heal that thing the best way it can be healed. And it seems like the same thing is true with the football team. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with it, yeah. And we're since we're a private school in Arkansas, we can't recruit or anything, but they do bump us up a classification. And I graduated with 84 other kids, and you compare that to the other schools in our classification, and theirs is a lot more. And we go down and play Highland Park, and I don't remember how many they said they had in their high school. But
Highland Park, here's what I know about Highland Park is, number one, their head football coach is a legend and an awesome guy. I mean, incredible, high character guy. I mean, Highland Park is a place where I would want my kids to play. Like I remember meeting Randy Allen and thinking, man, that's a guy that I would love for my kids to play for. He is a really impressive guy, awesome guy, and they've got about 2,000 to 2,100 kids in their school. It is because Randy Allen coaches the way that he does, those kids stick around. They'll have a senior class of 56 seniors, all still play football. So he'll have 56 seniors on his football team. He'll have 2 JV teams and 3 freshman teams, 2 or 3 freshman teams. I mean, he does an incredible job with those kids. And they've got a great community there. I mean, Highland Park is just an all around awesome place, and they won the state championship last year, and just an incredible run that they had. A great football players, and what really impresses me about Highland Park is their coaches. When they won the state championship, they had a couple injuries to their running backs, and they won it. They won the state championship against a really good team with their third string running back, and I mean, it's just it's an incredible school, and you guys went down and played them, and you guys won, and it was I mean, an awesome, incredible deal there, and you guys played them twice, and I think they beat you guys the first year, and then you guys came down and beat them the second year, and it's an incredible feat. They had won 70 some odd home games in a row, and for you guys to come down and do that is really impressive. And when I watched you guys practice, I asked your dad, I said, hey, how many kids do you have on your team, freshmen through seniors? And he gave me a number like 86 or 88.
Well, yeah. For most of the season, the freshmen actually play in their own little league, and so they're not even on the high school team at all. They don't come to the same practices or anything. We call it the junior high team in Arkansas. And so really on our team while we played Highland Park, it was the sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And I think it's about 60 kids. And then when the freshmen end their season, about the time that we go to the playoffs, then they move up with us, and then we have about 85 kids.
Wow. That's pretty crazy to have 85 kids in your whole in the whole program, but just to have a unique way of doing things that gives you an advantage. Now, let me ask you this: how has Pulaski Academy, how has that experience really prepared you for your life and for the future?
Football has definitely prepared me in different ways, and probably because I also live with my dad. He always says, "Be smarter than what you're working with," and that's what his dad taught him: be smarter than what you're working with. And so he used that in football, and being around that at practice and everything has taught me to be smarter in what I'm working with. Like, what can I do to improve myself or my surroundings with the things that I have?
Explain that. Explain smarter than what you're working with. What does that mean?
Yeah, like let's say you're a football coach and you're like, oh, we're not winning a whole lot of games. Well, I'm going to make the excuse that we don't have the best athletes, or we don't have good facilities, or, I'm having a lot of trouble at home or whatever. You have the tools that you need. I mean, we have the internet now. It's not like you can't access just about any information that you want. So use all your tools and all your resources that you can to help improve your team. And so I was looking at your stuff a little bit, and you have some older videos like how to run a 40 better, how to improve your 40, right? I saw that one. You kind of broke it down, and so I looked at that a little bit, and I immediately saw that you were talking about how the sprinter's arms were at about 90 degrees, and where he was flexing his arms compared to his legs. And so that's an example of be smarter than what you're working with. Well, I was working with just the information that was already given to me by previous people and what I've been doing myself, and I use outer resources. I used you in this instance, and I'm like,
that's cool. Yeah, that's pretty neat. Just this idea of, and I'm a teacher. I teach English, and sometimes in class, you get kids who just say, well, I don't know. Well, hey, you've got something that is the greatest device in all of human history, which is your phone. There's never been anything like it. Use it and look something up. Let's find the answer. It's not okay just to not have the answer.
Yeah, don't ever say I don't know. Always say I'm not sure yet, but I will find out.
That's good. That's interesting. I like that. Be smarter than what you're working with. Well, Zach, it's been awesome, man. I've really enjoyed this conversation. There's so much knowledge, so much to take away and think about, a lot for me to grow on and learn. Let me ask you this real quick before we let you go. How's your season going so far?
It's going pretty well. We're sitting at 4-1 right now, and we're about to play another conference game here in Arkansas, and I've been playing a little bit here and there. Got in a few plays, last weekend on Saturday, and I caught one pass for a total of 0 yards. It was a quick pitch. It was a little forward lateral type thing. But it's just so exciting to be back and able to play. I haven't gotten in a game before the season, and it was 2 years. And just getting that feeling back. Makes me look back, and I'm talking to you about this, and talking to a few other people here at school that didn't know about it, that are really interested in it, really reminds me of how thankful I am of the opportunity I was given with the stem cells, Dr. Heffley, and what if my dad hadn't stayed up those nights researching, if he was just like, oh, he tore his ACL, like I need to comfort him or whatever, but he was like, what can we make out of this? Like, what else can we do? So if it hadn't been for any of those things, then, I wouldn't be where I am today, and I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Just a dad's love for his son, and the idea of, hey, look, I'm not doing my job if I haven't done my due diligence and researched everything possible. That's pretty incredible, and it's going to be something that'll affect you the rest of your life, in that, you're not going to have to, have another surgery, hopefully, and that your meniscus has grown back, and that those things are all pretty neat things, and so. That's awesome. I'm glad that your knee is holding up. I'm glad that you're getting in and playing. Okay, so hey, I'm looking at your Twitter here, and I see that you got you got pictures here with Tom Brady and Coach Belichick. Tell me about that.
Coach Belichick and my dad got in contact through my dad. He went to go speak at some sports analytics conference. I think it was the MIT Sloan Sports Conference in Massachusetts, and a Patriots employee was there, I believe, and he was like, I think that's really cool. So he started emailing my dad, and eventually it got around to he gave my dad Bill Belichick's email information, and so they were directly making contact about every week. And then 2 years ago or so, or last year, Bill Belichick was like, "Hey, come to a Colts game when we play the Colts in Indianapolis." And we're like, "Oh wow, that'd be awesome." And he was like, "Yeah, and then after the game, you can come down and meet me, and after the game, come down where the families go." And we were like, "Oh my goodness, this is going to be awesome." And so after the game, we're like, I don't know if he didn't say anything else about it. I don't know if we have clearance to go down there. So I'm like, we got to go down there. So we go down there, and Bill Belichick's girlfriend meets us over there, and she's like, "Hey, come on through, come on through." So we go through, and Bill comes out, and as this is happening, all the players are walking by. It's like where you see the cameras on TV. It's just cement under the stadium, and all the players are walking by, and I saw Danny Amendola, who looks like a kicker. Really, I didn't even know who it was at first. I was like, "Who's this guy?" And I was like, "Oh wait, that's Danny Amendola." So you see guys walking by, and you're like, "Wow, this is awesome." So we talked to Bill Belichick for a little bit. And so we walked towards the buses because all the players got on the bus, and Bill Belichick's the last one to get on, and we're kind of holding him up. And he's like, "Hey, Zack, who do you want to see?" And I was like, "Well, I think I want to see Julian Edelman." And so he goes tells one of the employees, like, "Hey, get Julian off the bus." So Julian walks off the bus, and we talked to him for a little bit and get pictures. And on the internet, people have told me, they're like, "Oh, Julian Edelman's like 5'10", 5'11". We got a picture together. He's no taller than 5'8", for sure. But he's a big, strong guy, but he's not taller than 5'8" at all. And I thought that, you think that's really cool because you're like, oh, small people can't play football, blah, blah, blah. Well, here's this guy that's a stud in the NFL, and he's my height. And that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So he gets back on the bus. And my dad goes, "Can we see Tom Brady?" And he's like, "Yeah, get Tom off the bus." So Tom comes walking off the bus, and he's a real tall, lanky dude. And he doesn't look like an NFL player, really. I mean, he's just a smart guy, and he knows what he's doing. So we talked to him for a long time. Real nice guy. And get pictures with him and Bill Belichick. And then he gets back on the bus. So we talked to Bill a little bit longer. So then after that, Bill and my dad have been keeping contact through email about once a week. And the game that my dad played a couple weeks ago on ESPNU against Parkway Bossier, Bill Belichick emailed my dad about the game. He said he watched it wherever he was on ESPNU and commented on the game a little bit. And I don't know. I just think that's really, really cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Man, that is crazy. That is awesome. And that, you know what? It's just kind of cool. Your dad kind of does these different things. And all of a sudden, people take notice. And the funny thing about Belichick is that to the media, and I think oftentimes like last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, it was overtime, and he elected to kick, and you never do that in overtime. You always receive. Well, they've changed the rule though that if you kick a field goal, the other team has a chance to answer with a field goal or can score a touchdown. Well, Belichick elects to kick. And everyone thinks that's a mistake. I haven't asked him. I don't know. But I think he did that on purpose. And I think it makes sense doing that when that's the scenario. Of course, they lost. And after the game, everyone's asking him. And I'm watching the press conference, and I'm thinking, hey, Belichick, tell us your reasoning. Educate everybody on why you made that decision. But he refuses. He's just like, yeah, we just made that because, we told him to make that decision and we made it, and that's what we did. And he never tells anybody,
right,
kind of his reasoning behind. I think he thinks it's not his job to educate the rest of the NFL on his strategies.
Oh, yeah, because, I believe he thinks if he gives away his strategies, then, other teams might look into that and they might do the same thing. Well, then he doesn't have the advantage of doing that anymore.
It's funny because you kind of see him with this smug look on his face, and he just kind of says, hey, let everybody think that I'm an idiot. He goes, but I know that I know.
He's not worrying about anybody else thinking he's an idiot because he's like, I made the right decision, and he believes, he really did. He probably did, knowing him.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Well, that's pretty cool that whole thing took place, man. That is awesome. Zack, it is always a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thanks again for taking time out of your day and coming and visiting with us. All right, have a great week and good luck. Bye-bye. A football journey is a hands-on character curriculum that is used by coaches all over the country. It is a time where coaches get to invest in the players. How it works is every kid gets a football journey manual, and that kid gets to keep that manual forever. And then once a week, the coach sits down with all the players and walks the players through the manual. There's a place in there where the kids record their grades and track their grades throughout the year. And then also they get to set goals. And then also they get to write down and reflect on lessons that they've learned. And coaches can share personal stories about life lessons that they've learned along the way. It's a great time for coaches to really invest in players and to show the players that they care about them more than just as football players, but also as people. Also, if you're a fan of the podcast, please remember to subscribe and to like it on iTunes. That really helps us a lot. To rate it on iTunes and to check it out on YouTube and click the thumbs up button there. All right. Well, thank you. If you ever have any questions, you can always email me. My name is Derek Ware, and my email address is darrickware@gmail.com. You can also go to afootballjourney.com. That is afootballjourney.com, and you can email us through there and also find out more information about A Football Journey. All right. Thanks again for listening.